Thank you for coming, much appreciated. I'd like to introduce my team at the back. I've got marketing, if you'd like to stand up, Laura. So that's a TJC person. We have somebody from our GDPR team here. Mark, I'll introduce separately later, from British Telecom EE, and myself, I'm the head of sales for the UK. So that's introductions out the way. These are the things we're going to be doing, looking at the archiving update from BT, the journey to S4HANA, and then taking questions. But, as always, everybody has to sing for their supper. 2 slides, only 2 on the company. Just a quick review from where we started, 1997, right through to the modern day and the future that's coming. As a company, we started off as a consultancy. We then progressed into software tools that now automate everything. So archiving, if you use all the SAP tools that are on board, it can be manual, expensive, etc. So the market demanded automation, which is what we've given it. We've done that roughly 10 years ago, and we continue to enhance them to go into S4 environment. Bullet points, 500 plus software clients around the world. We've got offices in France, 2 offices there. The head office, which is Marseille, Paris is sales, Milton Keynes is where we're based in the UK, Munich in Germany, and in Pune in India, where we have both archiving experts and a team of developers. Multicultural organisation, we have, that's actually wrong, there's now 12 nationalities on board, and we've got 12 software tools, each one of those doing a different job in the archiving arena, which is, and the extraction data where we specifically operate. So, one key thing is everything that we sell is certified by SAP, whether it's in the old R3, the new S4, it's all there. And now, that's singing for your supper, as they say, the company over with. I'm going to hand over to Mark Holmes. His title is over 2 lines long, so please read that and you will be questioned on it on the way out. And I shall step down and let Mark carry on.
So, going to start with a bit of an update on ECC6 archiving from EE. And last time I was here, I kind of presented on that, and it's to try and give you a little feel of where we've got to and what the challenges have been. Yeah, we'll be honest with that. So, recap, why did we do it? So, clearly EU GDPR is one thing, and all of your information retention policies that go with that. That's a little bit more fiddly than it sounds, as some of you will have run into if you've been getting involved in this. But obviously that's mandatory, it's critical. The other thing that we had was a significant growth of data. So, you know, we run a big ECC6 with most of the modules in it, and particularly a commissions module, which is voracious and greedy in its appetite. You can't keep throwing hardware at it. Your indexes get a bit big, the system runs a bit slow. You've got to do something about that. You know, and it was causing performance issues that you can't get round that. We also, at the time, we were in a legacy hosting environment where we were running on older kit, and we couldn't get more kit to throw at it. So eventually it becomes an issue of you have to deal with it. And it's good practice to do that rather than just throw hardware all the time. We have had a data center move. In fact, we're a little bit obsessed with it. We're about to do another. But this one was a compulsory move, and at the same time we did a change to Unicode. Unicode we knew was going to bulk out the amount of storage we were keeping. You know, that was going to add another 20%. And the other thing we were doing at the time, EE, as many of you probably knew, was the culmination of a merger between Orange UK and T-Mobile UK. And bringing those two together onto one system, that's going to mean more data. So again, more and more challenges to say why you need to do something. So what did we do? We've managed to get a whole load of technical archiving done. That's probably the easier one. We've started getting through some of the business data on here. You can see from the key at the bottom for those who were able to see it. But one of the big things we've got left is the remainder of the business archive piece. Now, there's a number of reasons for that, which I'll go into. We've also run across some unusual things that you wouldn't expect to get into. So, for example, you run into queries that are run on systems that you just wouldn't anticipate were querying historical data in the way that they were. So actually you end up with things that you thought are tested and perfectly fine within your SAP estate, but as soon as you start to plug things in, you start to get a few little gripes. So an interesting challenge. On the other hand, we have found some additional opportunities, and in fact, very recently we found another one. So it's not it's a challenge, and you will find more things as you go through, but it's well worth doing. It's opening those cupboards to find all your skeletons. So, what has been our experience with this? So the first one is your own dev teams. I mean, our dev team's a good dev team. They know their stuff. They don't do archiving. They do lots of creative, functional things to get the business through, but they're not experts at archiving. And that's actually where our partnership with TJC have been very, very useful to us, because that's what they do. And so they brought a tremendous amount of knowledge about archiving to supplement what our team knows. And it is a partnership. You have to do this hand in hand. There's just no way that you can do it on your own. Your teams have got to talk. Where you've customized and bent your ECC6 tool, which, you know, we've all been there, that's where you have to share that expertise. And if you work together, you can get there. Automation, as Lawrence mentioned, that's the big win. So trying to do archiving without that is almost like having to put somebody in the hamster wheel. It's hard work, and that does make it easy. Once you've got it up and running, it's an automated process. It's there. Oh my goodness, yes. So these next two kind of go hand in hand. So finding people, if you've been running the system for a long time, who owns that data? Who can agree to get rid of it? And then once you've got that agreement, it's getting agreement to actually take the data away. That's even harder. It's just one of those things, and that's what I would say if you're about to go through an archiving approach. Don't underestimate those two. They're quite difficult. And the last one is make sure you test it. You won't find everything, as I've mentioned, but you'll find most things. So, journey to S4. And we will randomly twist back towards archiving and such like. So, EE was bought by BT back in 2015, for those who didn't know it, hence the mixture of logos on the screen. And as part of that acquisition and the wider BT transformations, we're looking to consolidate our IT estate to reduce where we've duplicated capabilities. Sensible stuff. So we need to transform, and that transformation includes a number of things. We need to transform our business. We need to transform the user experience. And I know that sounds glib, but a lot of it is around trying to make sure that you drive more value out of it by using the best processes as recommended by the tool. A lot of this is also to try and drive proper insight from our systems. It's not just enough to get your data out or get reports, it's to try and get more insight to help guide the business. And really, you know, it's about enabling the business to actually generate value from that. So part of this also, this transformation, is to provide a foundational layer for our business to give us our cornerstone of our ERP strategy. As part of that, we have selected the SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud Single Tenant Edition. I'm sure you probably caught the call out this morning in the keynote. But a couple of reasons behind why we did this. One was to change how we deal with upgrades. So for those of you who've kind of run across this before, you'll see that it's very hard normally to get your updates agreed, to get a business case to do each little upgrade. And then by the time you need it, it's a big project and it costs a lot of money. Everybody's really upset. But it would have been a lot cheaper had you done all the little updates. So this is part of our drive to change the way this works, to make sure that we get the updates every single time. And actually the other big shift, because clearly SAP is pouring a lot of money into the software, is to look at how do we get the most value out of it? How do we look through what's coming and work out which elements are going to work for our business and generate new value? And that's really where we're trying to switch that mindset. So, this is a slide used widely in our programme that's doing this transformation, known as Making Finance Brilliant, or MFB. I won't go into detail of, obviously, our internal strategy around this, but it's to kind of share the kind of breadth of what we're thinking about. So clearly, I've talked about some of these things before, around the value side of things and helping guide the business. Clearly, no transformation is going to happen unless you talk about productivity. You've got to get, a reduction in your low value add or no value add activity and drive people towards generating value. And clearly, it's a financial system at the heart of this. You've got to trust the figures. You've got to have your controls in place. But the bit to really emphasise that it's a business programme, and it's not an IT upgrade. It's not just a refresh. Is this covers the scope here. And actually, it's about looking at the people. Have they got the right skills? Do we need to train them up to do new things and deliver more value? Data. Can't emphasise this enough. Data's really, really difficult, and you need to make sure it's clean, that you have ownership, you've got processes. There's a lot of this around it. Financial controls, as I mentioned. Policies and process. You need to be looking at how do you simplify what you have. So review your policies, get them, aligned, consistent, one set ideally, and make sure those processes are not overly elaborate, complicated. Take the best recommended approach. We're looking at locations where we do various things, and obviously systems. And that's the way I point out that one last, because it's just one enabler in there. So, approach and sequencing. Could talk about this one for ages, but I'm not going to. Where are we now? Where are we heading? It's about moving from the fact that we've got multiple systems to do things, mixture of technologies, bit of a fragmented user approach, and it's about how we start building this journey, which is involving both the user experience, improving the processes, but starting with that reporting and data. And clearly, we want to get to these fine goals at the side here about single performance management solution, single finance solution with standardised processes, and a much better kind of user experience. Lots of principles around this: end-to-end ownership. All processes have an owner, effectively. I know it sounds obvious, but it's not. Fit to standard. Now, I saw a presentation the last time I was here with one of the other SIs. We had lots of jazzy phrases for this one around, vanilla is the only flavour and standard is the new custom. Not using any of those. Very catchy, though. But it is very much driven by, what's the right way to do this. We're trying to get the foundations in early, and as I said before, performance management. That's the kind of priority to get right. And it's part of the overall 1BT transformation programme. And the key bit, and I've left this on the slide, so our board, the ExCo, said this is a business transformation. It's not technology. In my view, if you don't do it as a business transformation, you won't get there, or you won't get there very nicely. So, our approach. Basically, we're trying to do this in a number of phases, subject to various constraints about our legacy environments, but trying to deliver incremental benefit throughout. And you can just see there's a selection of phases as we go through, starting off with some simpler ones around, we started off around pre-work actually, around pilots, trying to understand with the business about what kinds of things they were trying to achieve, what data they needed, how to prove their chart of accounts and everything else, very much business focused. We then started with data. Data was probably the first work stream mobilised. He says, looking at my lead essay over here, that was probably the first bit to get moving and to get the governance in place, get the data cleaning going, the data modelling. Very, very important. And we also started on expenses and the kind of sourcing processes, because you can get started with those relatively straightforwardly. We then moved through, as you can see, around trying to do consolidation. So those of you who've heard of central finance, that will kind of go in there. But for us, whilst it's important and a strategic foundation, it's a stepping stone to getting our core processes into S4. And that's kind of where it goes. And then very glibly on the last line, we talk about mopping up our self-accounting units, such as EE, and also our global rollout. So it's a global design, and then try, deal with BT UK first, and then start to try and roll out, in sensible chunks. So, for those who want to geek out in a bit of architecture, just a very simplified view of what we've got. Removed most of the middleware, but not all of it. But just to re-emphasise that point, we've got legacy systems that are going to come into central finance. The goal is this is transitional. They should all go. Okay, and you can see we've also started to recognise we're doing wider investments in SAP. So field glass, which is kind of people and service procurement, clearly that links into your Ariba procurement for most indirect activities. And so we're recognising that at the outset so we can design to make it fit fluid. Probably not much more to say on that one at the moment. Apart from master data governance, we've split that out from the main embedded version that we had actually, because of its role in terms of vital to get that data governance right. So, what would I say were essential considerations? Metadata management. Get the dictionary of your data, get the definitions of it, get your KPIs, how they're calculated, all of that, and get it under control. Get master data governance. Make sure that you've got control of your master data so you don't get all this stuff duplicated. If you've gone through all the effort of trying to clear that up and tidy it, you don't want to let it proliferate. Data quality. Some of your legacy systems won't be as good as you're looking for to get your value out of it. We all know poor data inside means poor data that comes out. Data ownership, get it done from the start. If we've learnt nothing from history, and as I showed you on the EE update, finding the data owners afterwards is really hard. Get that started at the beginning. And get your information retention policy sorted right from the start. So that way you can have them in place and your archiving rules can be set up. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, and we're actually in quite a few discussions on this at the moment. But just to make you aware, so talked about managing your costs with data tiering. So a mixture of hot storage, obviously S/4HANA in memory, very good, very fast. Not exactly the most cheap storage. You can look at warm storage or cool, being disk. And it's how do you get that balance of value for the business versus the cost that it's costing the business, because clearly there's a balance to be had. Now, S/4HANA, there's only one means to do this, which is archiving at the moment. You may have run across DLM, Data Lifecycle Management. The idea is it was going to drive the tiering, so you could actually offload to cheaper storage for older data, because probably after about 2 or 3 years, you're not going to need it in hot. It doesn't do it in S4. At the moment, all it will do is technical documents. So that only leaves you with archiving to nearline storage. And if you've gone to that effort, well, you might as well get it to do the technical archiving as well. It's not going to add anything. BW4, there are options. And depending which version of BW4 you have and how your hosting arrangement works, depends on what you can do. But there's everything from extension nodes, which is kind of like a compressed in-memory version, so you can squeeze about twice as much data in the same space, or you can offload to IQ. And again, you need to look at what the case is internally for how you drive the costs. I'll reiterate on this point. I've probably said it enough times, it's cliched, you'll hear it in all the conversations, but I absolutely believe this. You've got to do it as a business transformation. It just won't work as an IT upgrade. You need to fit to standard. And, that's about keeping your costs down. It's about challenging the way that the business operates. And that's, what makes you particularly special in that field. I could be glib at a high level and say, where's your competitive advantage in being different in finance? Now, there may be one or two cases, but the basic mantra is there isn't most of the time, so we should just do what's recommended. Review and simplify your policy and process. Don't go in trying to carry forward legacy. Use it as an opportunity to make it more lean and simplify your business. You'll get more results out of it. And you have to work as a single team. So, that's not just your business and your technology team, but that's also, your own company, or BT in this case, and your partners. It's the only way to make it work.
So, Mark said his piece. Just summarise, key data ship ownership is essential. Archive requires a buy-in. It's absolutely essential that archiving itself, it's not to counter what Mark said, but has to be looked at as a technology step, but the business is involved. Don't try and do it as a business-led, because they'll always say, keep everything, don't archive anything, we can't get to it. So you've got to explain why you've got to do it, and it's got to be led by the IT team, but the business have to be involved and agree what comes out at the other end is acceptable. S4HANA, that bit Mark very bravely said, the aging bit, where you take it out of hot and going down to cold, has not achieved the functionality that was expected by SAP. Temporarily, I'm sure they're going to get there, I'm sure they'll fix it, but the only way you can take data out safely from the environment is to archive it. If you do not, then your build-up of data, and on clients, what we have found in practice is it comes out on aging and it migrates back. And on average, that's between 24 and 48 hours. What you took out is back. Don't know why, I'm not here to explain why, but I'm sure they'll learn to flag it and do what they need to do. But at the moment, archiving is your reliable way of getting it out. And I also see for the future, if you think about it, if you're using your active side of the memory, the programming side rather than the resident data, you're going to be talking into the archive file, it pulls up the bits it needs, it puts it back. It sounds and appears to be a very efficient way of dealing with it all. So when that changes, we'll change our story, but at the moment we know there's issues there.
I think there's also a health warning around how you do this in S4, which is around making sure that you consider how you're doing your reporting. Because S4 is great, you can run operational reports against your actual production database. But what you shouldn't be doing is taking that away from just being operational reporting to be doing long-term trending. That's BW4 territory. So providing you think about that as operational reporting, well, the stuff that's hot really is only about 2 or 3 years. And if you stick to that mantra, then you won't fall for the obvious gotcha if you split part of it into archive and then you want to run a big report across the whole lot.
When you do archiving, normally there is a very hard justification for it. It costs money up front and you don't get your return till later. Your FD does not like that. He wants to see a quick return on the money he's invested, blah, blah, blah. This is a time where you can now look at your ECC world and say, but if we archive now, when we go to S4, we can reduce the volume that goes, so the number of memory blocks, even if you're on a hosted system, somewhere you're paying for the memory. Yeah, so you can get those memory blocks down, it becomes cheaper. So the less data you migrate, so the more you've archived out over time, the less data is going to go to S4, the less memory blocks you'll need. And that will give you the advantage, because these memory blocks, forgive me, I'm sure everybody has a different price, but I've always been told about $250,000 for a terabyte. Now, if that's right, and you need 4 terabytes if you don't archive, and you get it down to 2 terabytes if you do archive, I think you've just saved $500,000. There's your justification now to start archiving till, even if you're not ready. But when you get there, you will have pulled it all down, and that will therefore save money in the long term.